Hi folks, welcome to Wednesday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast. No Jimmy today, unfortunately, because we'll be mentioning the Old Firm, I think, at some point. And Jimmy's our football expert.
Well, I'm not. Well, I am, but I'm not an Old Firm one. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly not.
Right.
So we're going to go with PMQs, the press conference, and I'm pretty sure out of those two subjects, everything else will evolve.
I think so. It's quite. Start with my notepad had only one topic, and now it's got about 8. So.
Well, thanks for being here, Stuart.
Nice to see you again, Nori.
I think I would have struggled on my own today, but
well.
Right. Well, let's start with PMQs.
Hmm.
Starmer's, Keir Starmer's did, I thought, very well, if only by forcing Johnson not to answer any questions at all. Johnson's theme at PMQ seems to be, but you're not supporting me anymore. Last week was the same cry. Why he thinks it's the opposition's job to support the government, I'm not quite sure, but there you go. Your thoughts on Starmer?
Well, I have to take the opposite point of view. Well, not opposite, it's a different angle. Is that the Prime Minister was a lot better prepared than he usually is. But you're right, his standard, he doesn't answer the questions, and his standard response is to attack. I'd missed his final rant, because at that point I decided I had to switch over to the presser. But I noticed that his very first question, well, he was challenged, of course, by the Keir Starmer. Good question. On the 11th of May, the Prime Minister said he was going to follow the science only, in reverse, and to do with the pandemic. On the 21st of September, SAGE committee produced a scientific report, and it's been rejected by the Prime Minister. So from that, but of course, Johnson knew that was coming, so he had his prepared statement. He read from it, covers his position, and asked for support from Keir Starmer because he knew he wasn't going to get it.
I mean, big picture view of this, though. Johnson's in a really difficult position because he's got his libertarian wing, who really, what they want is everything just to go back to normal and let people die, effectively. You know, basically, do not risk business, risk the lives of the population. And he's got another element that have a slightly more humanitarian view of the world, who want something done to keep people safe. At the same time, they want business saved. Impossible. I mean, somebody's going to suffer out of this, regardless of how right you get it. Businesses are going to suffer to some extent, and people are going to get ill and die to some extent.
I watched Peter Bowen on Sky this morning. He used to always get a question at Prime Minister's questions in the old-fashioned way. And he nearly always would reference Mrs. Bowen, and everybody would laugh.
Yeah.
He's a character. But watching him, and he's from a pretty far right section of the party,
well,
but
he's
a stickler for process, isn't he?
Yeah, and a rabid Brexiteer.
But what's noticeable was, of course, he's got constituents like everybody else, and he's been a constituency. He's not. I don't think he's ever been in government. He's always been just a backbencher, as far as I know, and therefore he's probably a well-known, pretty reliable constituency MP, looking after his constituents. So yeah, it got flashed into my mind. Yes, he's got businesses in his constituency, and he's going to be getting, just like anybody, almost regardless of their political point of view, he's going to be getting worried constituents. Whichever way they vote, they're worried about what's happening with the virus. They'll have old relatives in care homes. They'll have people, people with jobs, their careers are going to the wall, businesses going to the wall. So you can never really predict which way any Tory backbencher is going to go.
I mean, I think Starmer's move has been a good move, where he's essentially what it appears his play is going to be: follow the science. If Sage says lockdown, lockdown, which means the Tories have to explain why they're not doing that, instead of simply going on about a balancing act. The fact that Starmer has come out and said he'd like to see a lockdown.
Well, this is what they've been saying. The London commentators have been saying over the last 2 days. Starmer is now moving to the attack. He's been fully supportive up to now. But he can see that he can support the idea of a circuit break. We can see it now in Northern Ireland, something like it in Scotland.
I'm not sure I would define it as an attack. He simply stated,
well, be in opposition.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your normal opposition. He's not standing up saying you're wrong. What he's doing is standing up saying you're right in as far as you go, but you don't go far enough.
Well, there are 2 points of view. The experts are all split. How far do you lean towards business, and how far do you lean towards people's lives?
Well, the health experts aren't split. The vast majority of health experts want more of a lockdown south of the border.
But even with that, but even with health, you've got people that desperately need cancer treatment. People who are not going for tests. People are not going to even see their GP because they don't feel safe going into that that kind of environment.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but all I'm really saying is that Starmer's is now saying, right, I've nailed my colours to the mast. My priority is the nation's health. You now have to explain why it isn't your priority by doing a lockdown. And I actually think that's a good position to take, because it means we have to discuss the balance. Why are the Tories choosing it to do the way they are? Because they want the balance between health and business to be tipped in business's favour. Now, it might be a totally legitimate position to take, but we need it discussed. We need it out in the open, and we actually need people given the opportunity to make their own minds up. Because if you own a pub right now in the central belt of Scotland, for instance, you want that pub open for the sake of your business. But you have to take on board the risk that's involved in that, and you have to basically decide that your business is more important than the risk to the population.
Well, I'm sticking with the reviewing the performances because we got prepared quotes peppered through this exchange. Keir Starmer was saying that test and trace, Sage has said test and trace only had a marginal impact, and it's actually going into decline, and it's cost £12 billion. The Prime Minister came back and said the NHS test and trace, he stressed the fact, he stuck the label in the front of it, was bigger than than anywhere else in Europe. And he, talking about the Keir Starmer, wants to close businesses and the country. But Keir Starmer came back with a really good line. He's talking about someone who's been an opportunist all his life. At that point, the Tory backbenchers groaned. I'm sorry, that sometimes it's a bit of theatre, isn't it? And I have concluded, this is a Starmer thing, I have concluded that Sage on circuit breaker, that is a circuit break, is in the national interest. And Labour backs it, and until the R numbers reduced below 1. So he made it clear where he stood. And then we ended up, of course, Keir Starmer's final bit was, the Prime Minister, this is his final question, you knew that, he refers to it, and he says, the Prime Minister will have a ramp ready. The Telegraph has said today, the Prime Minister will back a circuit break in 2 weeks. What's his answer? At that point, I changed channels. So can you tell me what his answer was?
He had his rant ready, effectively. And that was the point at which he emphasized he's referring to Stammer's position as being a U-turn because he's come out in favor of the circuit breaker. And he was no longer supporting the government. Well, last week, Boris accused him of not supporting the government. And the week before that, he accused him of not supporting the government. I mean, this government doesn't only want their own backbenchers to be yes men, they want the opposition to be yes men.
That's something I wanted to say really about Peter Bone. While I was watching him speak, it struck me, he sort of implied, and I thought he was going to say, but he didn't make it clear that there are two oppositions. There's the opposition within because you've got the Tory party, you've got everybody that's a yeser to Brexit, got a job in government of some sort, or a bag carrier at the least. The rest of them haven't got that. And there's a lot of them there that they didn't expect to be there. So there is an opposition, potential opposition within the Tories. Plus you've got the official opposition. Plus you've got the SNP. Now I didn't see Ian Blackford. What did he say?
Oh, it was abysmal. It was about the job retention scheme, but the delivery, he has to understand, somebody has to get him to take on board that if you're not in the chamber, you cannot use the same delivery. He was in his wee cottage up in Skye.
Does he preach? Does he stand up at the lectern in the local kirk and is he a church-going man?
I don't know. There was a cross on his back wall, I did notice, one of these modern.
He lives in Skye and he could well be a wee free.
Well, somebody needs to get a hold of him.
He's not got the fire and brimstone of a wee
free. He's not. His delivery in the Commons is not brilliant. He tends to be long-winded instead of punchy, but his delivery over the video link is abysmal.
Yeah.
I mean, Boris Johnson, when he got his second question, was actually chuckling away at himself. But Boris did the usual, I mean, Ian Blackford wanted Richie Sunak to look at reintroducing the original furlough, the 80% payment. And Boris just got up and said, well, we've got our job retention scheme in place, away and whistle. But obviously when he got his second bite and Boris got his last thrust, I can't actually remember the phrase he used, but he put the boot right in. I mean, Boris won it. But Ian, somebody needs to get a hold of him and teach him the difference between an intimate camera shot and standing up in the Commons.
Look, there are two completely different arguments for them withdrawing, the SNP team of MPs of just withdrawing from the chamber, because they could still do all their constituency work from home. And they are making no impact at all on this government.
Well, I don't think he is. I'm not impressed with him as a performer. He might be the greatest manager in the world. He might run that team down there with total efficiency, but his public view is not good.
He reminds me of my first boss, and my first job was my first boss was a bank manager, and it was in a village in the Highlands. And the bank shut at 3. And in those days, the rule, it was in the Highlands, it was mañana. And as long as the book's balanced, we could be out of the bank at 3:30 and on the golf course by 4:15. And I'd be up there with the manager playing golf. But Ian Blackford reminds me of that manager.
Well, I don't know. Was your manager very good at delivering speeches?
I can't remember. He was very good to me. He gave me a good start in life.
Well, I'm afraid Ian really does need to get some coaching.
I think he needs replacing. I don't think there's any point coaching him.
Well, as I say, I have no idea of his qualities as the Westminster leader, I haven't heard anything bad about it. But as the face of the SNP in the Commons, nah, it doesn't work for me, I'm afraid.
Can we, before we drift away from London, there is one topic, because we've got lots to talk about, but there is one thing I'd like to bring up, which is Laura Kuenssberg's got to stop signing off as an official spokesperson for the government.
Signing off as.
Yes, you're not.
That's all from Laura Kuenssberg.
Can I try and share a picture on the screen? I'm going to try anyway,
right,
with your permission. I think share screen. I think it's sitting there waiting. Host disabled participant screen. Oh no, you've got disabled it, so I can't. So it doesn't matter.
Well,
it's been fun and games on Twitter overnight. We've discovered that Dominic Cummings issues at Twitter a message, and within minutes, all 4 correspondents who are lobby correspondents, the Laura Kuenssberg, the Bibby or whatever, anyway, 4 of them all retweeted exactly the same words. And it's an unattributed spokesperson for number 10, but everybody knows it's Dominic Cummings.
Right, I've sorted the screen share.
Have you? Well, see if it's sitting there. So if it should, let me just check. It's sitting there. It's sitting there. It should come up. Well, we'll find out. Hey, we're about to find out. What do I do? Oh, I go back to their share screen, and I'll bring up. There, that one there. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Right.
There you go. That's it.
Okay. Ross McCafferty, Cummings group text working then. So they've got Harry Cole, Laura Kuenssberg, Beth Rigby, and Tom Newton-Dunn. And they all quoting the same quote, which is an attack on Keir Starmer. What the content is immaterial. This all came out at the same time. And it was also, the quote was also, I think it's the chairwoman of the Conservative Party also tweeted it. She tweeted it before all the hacks did. And so Laura Kuenssberg in particular is now being accused of being just she might as well take her salary from Dominic Cummings.
I do think this senior government source tag is interesting. Senior government source makes it sound somebody important's told her this.
Dominic Cummings is important.
Well, yeah, why didn't she just say Dominic Cummings?
Because they won't, because they're afraid that they won't get access to Dominic Cummings if they upset him.
Do you want to close that down now?
I will do. Stop there you go. Well, I'm glad that worked anyway.
Well, I just, well, I'm not surprised, because as they cut the number of journalists in the BBC, which is apparently the intent of the new chairman of the BBC, is it new chairman or new CEO? CEO, I think. It'll be easier and easier for political parties to get their own words spoken by a journalist, because they won't have time to look into it and have a genuine in-depth take on what's said.
Well, I've accused Laura Kuenssberg for some time as just being a spokesperson for number 10. And why do they hide behind number 10?
I don't actually think that's entirely fair.
Well,
she has when she gets the opportunity asked hard questions.
She was trending overnight. She was the #1 trend in the UK overnight. Everybody was making fun of her.
Oh well, poor Laura.
Poor Laura.
The First Minister's press conference.
Yes, that's going to be controversial. Isn't it? Did you presumably caught it?
I caught bits of it.
What the start? Was there anything at the start? Yes, there was. The figures are terrifying again. 1,429 new positive cases, 43 more in hospital. So there another 14 in intensive care. That's 49 people in intensive care, and I forget how many beds there are in Scotland. They're not a huge number. And then we got the NRS, because it's a Wednesday, the National Records of Scotland. Half of the dead are under 80. The dead were plus 15 on the NRS, were they? Or 25 last week.
Yeah.
Over the week. Sorry, yes. So there were half of them were under 80, and some of them were even under 60. Although I didn't find that terribly controversial. The review of the current restrictions is tomorrow, and there will be a virtual FMQs tomorrow online.
Well, and she flagged up the fact that there are going to be no changes. Everything's going to stay as is.
I think mostly, yeah.
Apart from face masks, I think.
Then she came to the big news that'll be all the headlines. Travel. And she, how can you, she kept it general to start with. There are 5 health board areas in strict restrictions. Don't leave and visit unless you have a good reason to, and don't come into these areas unless you've got a good reason to. The intention is we need to minimize travel, but I want to talk about travel to and from parts of England. Baboon. Blackpool.
Well, that'll be the headline, because
Blackpool.
they've proved that infection has travelled up from Blackpool with people from Scotland visiting Blackpool.
It's that time of year. It's the Blackpool illuminations. People go from Scotland, particularly Glasgow, because it's quick. You get in a coach in Glasgow and Buchanan Street in
which
Blackpool.
She also mentioned coach travel being a problem. So she's really turned that round and said, I take it there's an Old Firm game of some sort in Liverpool.
Yeah, this is it. So first of all, you got the general. We went from a totally first of all, she was completely general about travel restrictions. Then she goes to about England. Then she goes to about Blackpool, and then she goes to the real controversial thing, which is about the Old Firm match this weekend. And the other day we had a row in the papers about pubs in Carlisle were trying to attract Old Firm fans to come down and spend their money there. And now we've got the question of pubs in Blackpool attracting coach loads of Old Firm fans to come to Blackpool and spend all their money there. And now she didn't put it that way, but obviously they'll make a lot of money if they get a coach load of Celtic or Rangers fans spending all their booze there. She went on at some length about that, didn't she? You must have.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously worried. Her emphasis this week on self-isolating, and the kind of different things like traveling in coaches on public transport, all that kind of thing. They're obviously very worried. That's the message I'm getting, is so they can't be that confident that this central belt lockdown is going to do the job.
I think she's, that sometimes we think the UK4, as I've got my short version for it, working together with the other devolved regions, as they like to think of it in England, and the UK government. Sometimes we think it's for political reasons that they work together, but there are practical reasons. At the moment in Wales, as we've heard, they're very upset about if you're in Cardiff or one of the South Wales areas that's got a reasonably high infection rate, you can't travel to Pembrokeshire or to Clwyd in the northwest, to the low infection rate areas. You can't actually do so. But people from England can. And it's a particular issue in the north of Wales because it's just a short run from the Liverpool area down into the holiday resorts in North Wales. And so he was making an appeal about that. Now, the First Minister was saying that she wants a Cobra meeting this week to discuss the travel. I think she didn't make it clear, but it's pretty clear. It's about the travel ban, potentially having a travel ban across the whole of the UK.
That swathe of the northeast has fairly high.
They traditionally come from Newcastle area to Edinburgh when there's a bank holiday. That's their tradition. So Edinburgh fills up, doesn't it, with Geordies?
Yep. So I wonder if the east borders will still be so well, if the representatives, the MPs, MSPs from the east borders will be quite so happy about an open border if they start getting infections trickling up from the northeast of England. It's difficult. I mean, it is difficult. Mark Drakeford threatening to close the border, looking for cooperation, which I don't think the Tories will give him. Be interesting to see where he goes, because he only gave them till today, I think. He wants an answer from the PM today,
well, that's
which he probably won't get.
Now, I can throw in what I saw about the Irish situation, because this morning Sky were carrying live from Stormont, and First Minister there was explaining they're going to have a 4-week circuit break, 2 weeks of the schools closed over the autumn break.
Yeah.
They have a particular different issue, of course. They've got cross-border problems. And it's the border region, border parts of the Republic border parts of Northern Ireland that have the high infection rate. In fact, Derry, London, Derry, that area is the highest in the whole of the United Kingdom infection rate. And I was watching the First Minister in Northern Ireland explaining what they were going to do, and then there was someone said that they'd been out in London, Derry, and up to the border. The border runs with the Republic runs right up to the edge of the city, and the police, the Gardaí, were out on the border, stopping people. So
the Gardaí, the Southern
the Gardaí,
police,
as they're called,
the Republic,
the Guards, as they're called. But the Southern Ireland police were at the border. They're not stopping people crossing the border, but they're obviously, I mean, at the very least, that's an international border. At the very least, they have much more powers than the Welsh police have. And the Welsh police have been fining people from England crossing that border way back in the lockdown in the spring.
Well, because it's only a recommendation not to travel. That's Drakeford's problem with it. He needs it to be a rule that can be enforced. Still. Any good news?
It was a different when it was a national lockdown, I suppose. That's made it gave the Welsh police stronger powers.
Any news today that might cheer us up?
Cheer us up.
Obey
the rules, she says. I've got highlighted here the poll, of course, right behind me there. Look at it. What does it say?
58 yes, 58 yes, 42 no.
Yes. So that's the highest it's ever been. Should Scotland be an independent country? Obviously, excluding the don't knows, you've got 58% yes, 42% no. It's never been so high. It's an Ipsos Mori poll. Over 1,000 Scots were interviewed, 16 plus, because they get a vote at 16.
This wasn't the Angus Robertson one,
no, this is for Scottish Television, STV.
Ah, that explains why they asked that question at the press conference then.
And they drilled down into the voting intentions. I don't have all the figures, but they drilled down to the voting intentions for the next, the Holyrood poll next year. So what have we got? Well, only 1/3 of the people there were against completely. That's 42% against. So where is that new poll for 1/3 no?
If you're looking at the various bits that were published, there was kind of different questions with
the Greens come out well in the list.
In the Holyrood election stats.
They're higher than the Lib Dems again.
Yeah, well, I saw them at 11 seats. This poll's got them at 9.
Oh, well. But they're holding firm stronger on the list than the Lib Dems. The Lib Dem, Willie Rennie is becoming a pointless. Sorry, Willie, if you're watching.
They're going to be a party of the islands.
I think it's worth the ITN guy turned up at the presser. He's only there occasionally, and of course he went political. He asked the political question of the First Minister. What did she feel about the 58% for independence? I won't comment on that. People want leadership, firm decisions, tough decisions. Yeah, and I'm frank about my mistakes. And in any case, I trade away approval ratings to get rid of COVID. So these are all quotable lines from the First Minister.
And I noticed Duncan Hothersall was tweeting about it, not happy. So I didn't ask him, but if he watches, I'll ask you now, Duncan. Do you think there should be censorship of the questions the press asked Nicola Sturgeon?
You can't stop the press asking the question.
Well, yeah. But Duncan seems to think this was Nicola's fault that the ITV asked the question.
Well, they would. But who else asked the question? Whether they were back to the travel thing, which, as I say, it'll be in the tabloids and everywhere, and on the newsstands. Neil Courant, PA, what was he asking about? Keir Starmer wants a national circuit breakdown. Would you, First Minister, like a travel ban, a legal travel ban? And she said, well, the police can't be everywhere, even if it's got a law, but it's not ruled out. Apart from that, that's me on the presser.
She could literally say to most of these questions, no, I'm not going to rule anything in or out. Okay, thank you. Go away now. So the poll was a bit of a cheer up this morning. Anything else strike you today?
We're getting towards the end, or the second half of our show. I suppose we do have a trailed article by Iain Lawson, which is it's got nothing to do. We're right in that area, that muddy area of SNP civil war, as its opponents would call it. And to be honest, it's got nothing to do with Alex Salmond or Nicola Sturgeon. Not directly, anyway. It is about, you could call it an anti-woke fix. Let's be fair, because what we're seeing inside, apparently,
it's a pro-woke fix.
Oh, sorry, yes, a woke fix, yes. So say anti the rest of the membership. It's a woke fix to support the woke candidates in the upcoming candidate elections. Bear in mind is that there's 7 SNP candidates standing to be the candidate in Edinburgh East and then Edinburgh West. Goodness knows. I'm not going to go into the detail of that at all. However, I waited all day it must have gone up about 8 o'clock this morning, the post. I waited and I checked just before we came on to see if there was much in the way of reaction anywhere. And so far, I can't see anybody saying it's not true what Iain Lawson has posted.
Well, to give an outline to the listeners, what he's suggesting is that there's been several small moves by the NEC to control the candidates list and the opportunity for the candidates to communicate with the membership. I would suggest anybody in the SNP goes and reads it, because if it is true, and I don't know if it is, but I've no reason to disbelieve him, there is definite shenanigans at the crossroads. And I come back to this, it looks so like Labour.
That's what I nearly said. Yes, got it. These people just must have moved from Labour, or even worse, the SSP.
It looks so like the nonsense that the Labour Party get up to, gerrymandering votes. And it's a very, very dangerous thing to allow to happen. And I would say to anybody on the side who feels maligned, shall we say, by this blog, that one day you won't control the NEC. And on that day, if they keep the shenanigans going, you will suffer. Let's keep it democratic and honest, and basically make the rules rigid.
You do want us to have a phone in, don't you?
No, I tell everybody not to phone me during half one and
We
half two.
could do a phone in program as well, you know.
Yeah, I suppose we could actually. So I think it's really important that they get this sorted, and I don't think they'll get it sorted at this conference. Mostly because
it's a worry. I mean, it's you can't say that there isn't an SNP civil war going on. It's just you can't deny it now.
I wouldn't call an SNP civil war yet. I mean, I'm not sure the membership has taken sides. You know, the greater membership. There is definitely around the NEC. There is definitely problems that need to be sorted, and it actually doesn't matter who wins or who loses the argument. In a lot of ways, what matters is how they have that argument, that the playing field is level and seen to be level.
Well, that would be my position entirely. I mean, you've got to be democratic and seen to be democratic, and that apparently, according to Iain Lawson's post this morning, is not the case. And as I said, I checked before we started this recording, looking for reactions on social media and on the national newspaper, the national paper, and so far, no, I can't find anybody denying the truth of it.
Well, and then therefore, I mean, because basically, tell people what he's done in the blog is he's taken several small moves that have been made and he's listed them and presented it as a. Do you realize how devastating this is to the democracy of the party?
It disadvantages ordinary members who want to stand, and people already on the NEC and close to the SNP HQ have a great advantage, and that's before they even get to vetting.
I mean, I'm presuming these are rule changes that they've made, but they really do need to be looked at, and it needs to be. They need a constitutional answer to this, so it can't be changed at will by the NEC. So
I suppose now it's
conference decisions.
The question that arises in my mind is that given that we've got a conference coming up on the 28th, but it is only going to be virtual.
Which is why I'm not confident this will get dealt with.
Was my question. Do you think that's... Unfortunately, it looks as though the plotters could get away with it.
Yeah. That, I mean, it's done. So the easy route is just to let it go. And I don't think they should take the easy route, because if they get away with it this time, they'll try and get away with more next time.
And it's like, you couldn't make it up. On the day that the poll hits 58% for yes, the SNP apparently has turned into the Labour Party.
It's really worrying, very worrying. And something needs to be done.
Maybe that's why they're so popular.
What, that they've turned into the Labour Party?
Yes, maybe that's just the way the Scottish voters like it.
What, they like a party cutting its own hands off?
They like a sack of ferrets, that's what they like.
Well, I think we'll call it a day at that, Stuart, unless you've anything you particularly want to finish.
I've got nothing more with look, we've got good news there right behind me. So let's settle on that, eh?
Yeah, and it does seem, I mean, I can't remember so much nonsense surrounding the SNP for years, and it doesn't seem to have dented the polls at all.
That's what I'm saying. The voters must like it.
Yeah, very weird.
By the way, I'll be dancing on the streets of Wraith when it hits 60%.
I'll give everybody a heads up just now. I don't think we'll be podcasting on Friday.
What about Saturday then, Nora? Have you given that a thought?
Yeah, we'll maybe do that. We'll have a think about that.
I shall see if I can put together. I've got legacy stuff that I might give you the viewers and listeners a sample of.
Okay, we'll maybe do that then. Well, thanks for listening, folks, and thanks for being here, Stuart.
It's been a pleasure, Nori.
And hopefully we'll have Jimmy back in the next couple of days.
Oh, we never actually let the viewers and listeners hear what Jimmy's opinion was of the football, the Old Firm fans going to Blackpool. His opinion was that Celtic don't want this match to go ahead because they're scared to lose. So they want it banned.
They want, okay. Jimmy, I have to say, does have a dog in this fight.
I just thought it would have been unfair of me not to mention his contribution because he made an effort.
That's true. He did to get his message across.
He did.
Okay, folks, we'll call it a day at that. Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll catch you all tomorrow.
Cheerio.
Cheers for now.